My name is Jolie Hart. I'm 31 years old, and the day my father decided to celebrate throwing me out of his house, he treated it like it was some kind of grand reopening, like he was cutting a ribbon on a brand new life without me in it. I pulled into the driveway just to grab the last of my things, and froze. There was a massive banner stretched across the garage door, bright red letters screaming loud enough for the whole street to see, "Goodbye, deadweight. Don't come back." The grill was smoking. Classic rock blasted through outdoor speakers. Neighbors stood around laughing, holding drinks, like this was a block party instead of a public humiliation. From the deck, a slurred voice called out, 31 and still living off daddy. That's just embarrassing. Another chimed in. About time he cut her off. Should have done it years ago. Then something smacked against the side of my car. A burger bun. Someone yelled, "Hey Jolie, here's your last free lunch." Laughter exploded. Even the kids were watching, whispering, pointing, like I was part of the entertainment. I stood there, keys clenched so tightly in my hand, they left marks in my skin. And the strangest part, no one thought they were being cruel. Because this was the version of me they had repeated for years. A freeloader, a failure, a burden. They believed it. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I didn't give them the scene they were clearly waiting for. I walked past them into the house, straight to the laundry room. My last box was sitting exactly where I left it sealed, labeled like I had already been erased. I picked it up, carried it back outside, and before getting into my car, I paused. Then I took a photo, the banner, the crowd. My father standing in the middle of it, all smiling like he had just won something. He noticed. Of course he did, and he smirked like I was finally taking a souvenir from the place that had put up with me for far too long. I didn't say a single word. I just got in my car and drove away. 2 days later, my phone lit up with messages I never thought I'd see. "Jolie, we need to talk. Call me back, please. I'm asking you. I'm begging you." And that's when everything changed. If this story touched you in any way, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. When you do, you're helping spread stories that matter and becoming part of a community that values understanding and connection. I'd also love to know, where are you listening from, and what's the weather like there right now? I read every comment. The next part of this story includes some fictional details supported by AI to deepen the emotional and learning experience. Thank you for spending your time here. I hope you enjoy every moment of the story. The version of me my family told the world was simple, clean, easy to believe. I was 31, a failed engagement that people like to whisper about as if it counted as a divorce. Sitting behind a laptop all day, living under my father's roof, drifting through life while everyone else carried me. It was a story people enjoyed repeating. You could hear it at church potlucks and quiet conversations on driveways and all over social media where strangers love to say things like, "Sometimes tough love is the only way," or maybe this will finally force her to grow up. That version of me made people feel comfortable, superior. The truth was quieter, complicated, and far more inconvenient to say out loud. I had moved back into my father's house 3 years earlier, not because I had nowhere else to go, but because his business was quietly collapsing. Hart Custom Signs had once been stable. It wasn't glamorous, but it worked. Storefront signs, event displays, vehicle wraps for small businesses across San Diego and nearby towns. It paid the bills. It gave my father, Daniel Hart, something he could point to with pride. Then things started to slip. Material costs went up. 2 major clients delayed payments for months. A large installation got stuck in permit approvals and never moved forward. From the outside, nothing looked different. The truck still left the driveway every morning. The phone still rang. The website still showed smiling photos of finished projects. But inside, everything was running on fumes. Week to week. Invoice to invoice. Promise to promise. And when things started to crack, my father did what he had always done. He got louder. He blamed everyone. Younger workers didn't want to work hard anymore. Customers were cheap. The economy was broken. Regulations were impossible. People in management didn't know what they were doing. And eventually, like everything else in that house, the The blame found its way to me. Never him. What my father never told anyone was that I was the reason his company hadn't collapsed 2 years earlier. The kind of work I did didn't impress my family. To them, a real job meant steel-toed boots uniforms, something visible, something that looked exhausting enough to be respected. I worked remotely. I was a freelance bid coordinator and operations consultant. I helped suppliers, contractors, and service companies organize their vendor documents, clean up proposals, track deadlines, and fix the kind of small mistakes that quietly cost businesses thousands of dollars. It paid well, not because it was glamorous, but because most people hated doing it, and even more businesses were terrible at it. I was good at systems, at patterns, at spotting problems before they exploded. That made me valuable to strangers, and completely invisible inside my own family. At the beginning, helping my father was supposed to be temporary. That's what I told myself. It was easier than admitting I was slowly becoming the thing holding everything together. The first month, I just reorganized a few invoices. The second month, I caught a missed permit renewal that would have cost him a city contract. After that, things started to unravel faster. He wasn't filing sales taxes correctly. Equipment leases were set to auto-renew at ridiculous rates. Half of his incoming payments weren't even real because no one was following up properly. The bookkeeper had quit months earlier and left behind a mess no one understood. Every time I fixed one issue, two more appeared behind it, like rot spreading under the surface. But no one ever said that out loud. My father never introduced me as the person keeping his business alive. To clients, I was my daughter, figuring things out right now. When I stepped in during dinner calls and saved a project from falling apart, he treated it like I had accidentally helped. When I negotiated payment plans with suppliers to keep his accounts from being frozen, he told relatives I mostly just answered emails. That was the role I was given, useful, but never acknowledged. There was a Friday I still remember too clearly. Payroll was short. Installers were waiting. And my father, Daniel Hart, would have rather let everything collapse than admit he couldn't cover it. So I stepped in. I transferred the money quietly just enough to close the gap. No announcement, no discussion. Just another problem solved before it became visible. Later that night, he laughed about it. He called it a loan like it was temporary, like it didn't matter. Then he said something I had heard my whole life. Families don't keep score. He repeated it twice like it made him generous. That sentence matters. Because families like mine only say that when they benefit from nobody counting. What I covered went far beyond groceries or small favors. I paid for software subscriptions tied to his business. I cleared overdue utility bills for the workshop before they shut the lights off. I reinstated insurance on one of the company vans after it lapsed. I rushed payments for materials he forgot to order. I fronted deposits to vendors when checks were about to bounce. Never all at once. Always just enough. The missing piece, the silent correction, the invisible support that kept everything from collapsing loudly enough for outsiders to notice. That's why no one saw it. That's why they could pretend it didn't exist. My father hated that I worked from home. To him, if he couldn't see physical effort, then it wasn't real work. Visibility was morality in his world. He would walk past me in the kitchen while I was on a call trying to save a contract worth over $10,000 and say, "Must be nice." At dinner, he'd joke about my little computer thing. An hour later, he'd ask if I could rewrite an email to a supplier because he thought they sounded angry and didn't understand half the words they used. He treated my skills like a tool he didn't respect but relied on anyway. Useful when needed, uncomfortable to acknowledge. And the rest of the family followed his lead. Because in families like ours, disrespect flows from the loudest voice and settles everywhere else. My younger sister Emily learned early that mocking me earned approval. She repeated his tone, his jokes, his dismissiveness, like it was a language she needed to survive. My uncle Mark drifted into the business after his own life stalled out. He bounced between installation jobs, half-hearted sales calls, and drinking that started on weekends, but never really stopped when the week began. No one had to plan it. No one had to say it out loud. Everyone just knew their role. My grandmother Ruth had her own way of participating. She wrapped every insult in concern, every judgment in scripture. She could say something deeply cutting and make it sound like she was praying for your soul. No one ever had to plan anything in that house. That's what makes a toxic family system so effective. Once everyone understands the hierarchy, they don't need instructions. They just perform their roles automatically. Nothing about how they saw me had changed. What changed was something else. My father started talking about selling the house, downsizing, moving on. And that's when it finally hit me. He believed his own version of the story. He truly thought he had been the one carrying me all those years. That the roof over my head was proof of his generosity. That because I never billed him, never sent an invoice, everything I had done simply didn't count. In his mind, if I left, the only thing he would lose was the inconvenience of seeing me in the kitchen. Nothing more. Then, one Friday night, I overheard him in the backyard. He was talking to my Uncle Mark and a neighbor, laughing like it was nothing. He said he was thinking about giving me 90 days to get out. Said maybe hitting rock bottom would finally turn me into a real woman. They laughed. My sister Emily laughed too. And something in me shifted. That was the moment I stopped feeling hurt and started feeling clear. I didn't argue. I didn't confront him. I started documenting. People think revenge begins with anger. Mine didn't. Mine began with spreadsheets. Not because I was cold, but because I understood something they didn't. In families like mine, emotion is a trap. If you cry, you're unstable. If you raise your voice, you're disrespectful. If you defend yourself, you prove everything they already believe about you. Facts, though. Facts are harder to rewrite. Facts were the only language my father, Daniel Hart, couldn't easily interrupt. Even then, he would try. So I didn't just gather numbers. I built a record, a full picture. Not just of money, but of dependence. I created a timeline going back 30 months. Every time I stepped in to cover a gap for Hart custom signs, it went into a file. Every rushed payment. Every software renewal. Every emergency order I had to put on my own card because he forgot or delayed too long. Every permit fee I paid online before the city locked them out. Every fuel transfer. Every invoice I corrected before a client rejected it. Every proposal I rebuilt under my own freelance account because my father had missed the deadline and then asked me to just fix it. Every message where he said, "Can you handle this one thing?" Every voicemail from my Uncle Mark asking for a few $100s to keep a company vehicle from being repossessed. Every text from my sister Emily asking me to cover her rent because things were tight, promising she'd pay me back after her next brand deal. And every time she didn't. When I finally added everything up, I sat back in my chair and just stared at the screen. It wasn't just a lot, it was grotesque. The company support alone had passed $100,000 when you included both direct payments and the losses I had quietly prevented. Personal support pushed it even higher. And that still wasn't the full number. Because unpaid labor doesn't come with receipts. How do you calculate the value of preventing a business from collapsing under its own disorganization? What's the price of catching a tax issue before the state freezes an account? What's the cost of every peaceful dinner they enjoyed, while someone else stayed up past midnight fixing what they broke? There's no clean answer for that. I printed the numbers anyway. Around that same time, something else happened. A client I had worked with for years offered me a long-term contract in Colorado. Not a traditional job, but stable enough. Real enough. Enough to leave. Enough to build something that didn't depend on being invisible. I signed the agreement. I put down a deposit on a small one-bedroom apartment just outside Denver. And I told no one. I rented a storage unit near the interstate and started moving my things out slowly, quietly, a few boxes at a time. Winter clothes one week, books the next, kitchen tools I had paid for myself. The monitor my father assumed had just appeared out of nowhere. It probably sounds calculated. It was. If you agree with the way I chose to stay silent, gather evidence, and quietly prepare my exit, instead of arguing, drop a 1 in the comments. I want to know how many of you would choose clarity over confrontation in a moment like that. When you grow up in a family where every boundary turns into an argument, secrecy stops feeling like dishonesty. It starts feeling like oxygen. My father didn't wait long to make it official. About 6 days before I planned to leave, He cornered me in the kitchen early on a Tuesday morning. I was reviewing a supplier compliance file when he walked in, leaned against the counter, and told me he wanted me out by the end of the month. He used that tone people use when they expect applause for saying something cruel. He said he was doing it because he loved me, because it was time to stop enabling me. He said no decent man would respect a woman still depending on her father in her 30s. He said it was embarrassing when clients came by and saw my car parked outside in the middle of the day. He said I needed a real job, my own place, a wake-up call. I asked him one question. Do you want me gone, or do you want an audience when I leave? He smiled and said maybe both. That should have been the moment I told him everything. Every number, every receipt. Every late night I spent keeping his business from falling apart. It would have felt good for about 10 seconds. Then he would have done what he always did. He would have denied it, reframed it, turned it into a story where I was unstable, dramatic, ungrateful. By the next family gathering, the version everyone believed would be that I had tried to manipulate him after he generously pushed me to grow up. No. If the truth was going to land, it needed witnesses. Better than that, it needed consequences. He gave me until Saturday. I nodded like someone too ashamed to argue. But that wasn't what I was doing. By Thursday, everything important was already gone. Friday night, I shut down the last pieces I had quietly been holding together. I removed my card from company utility accounts and service subscriptions. I disconnected the backup payments I had been covering without anyone knowing. I took my access off vendor portals. I informed one supplier that any future emergency orders would require direct management approval. Then, I sent out 2 overdue client emails from the company account, exactly as my father had dictated. Except this time, I didn't fix them. I didn't soften his tone. I didn't translate his words into something professional. I sent them exactly as he had written them. It's amazing how quickly people lose respect when they're forced to hear themselves without someone cleaning it up first. Saturday afternoon, I came back for the last box and walked straight into the party. Later, people asked if the banner shocked me. It didn't, because it wasn't new. It was just the truth printed in large red letters for everyone to see. Goodbye. Dead weight? Don't come back. That wasn't cruelty invented for a single day. That was how they had talked about me for years when they thought I couldn't hear. My Uncle Mark was already drunk on the patio, sweating through his shirt, waving a beer bottle like he was giving a speech. My sister Emily stood near the grill, dressed like she was filming a lifestyle video instead of a public humiliation. Full makeup, phone already in her hand, capturing clips, angles, reactions. Because moments like this were more entertaining once you could edit them and add music later. My grandmother Ruth sat under a patio umbrella, her lips pressed tight in that familiar expression she used whenever cruelty was disguised as moral concern. My father, Daniel Hart, wore an apron that read, Grill Master, like the universe had personally confirmed his authority. When he saw me in the driveway, he opened his arms wide, smiling, like he was welcoming me to my own funeral. Well, look who finally came to collect her stuff, he said. The neighbors laughed, not loudly, just enough. Because cruelty feels safer when it's wrapped in sunlight and small talk. I walked past all of them without saying a word and went inside. The last box was exactly where I had left it in the laundry room. On top of it was a note written in black marker. Starter kit. Inside were dryer sheets, instant noodles, a half-used roll of trash bags, and a printed list of cheap apartment complexes nearby. Like they were doing charity for something they had just thrown away. That almost made me react. Not because it hurt, because it was so unnecessarily theatrical. When I walked back outside, my Uncle Mark was already shouting his voice louder, now leaning into the performance. He started talking about how my mother would be ashamed if she could see what I had become. My mother had been gone for 9 years. He knew exactly where to aim. Emily laughed. Then she tossed something toward me. It hit the side of my car. Another piece of food, more laughter. And through all of it, my father said nothing. That mattered more than anything else. Because in families like mine, leadership isn't about stopping cruelty, it's about allowing it. I placed the box in my trunk, took out my phone, and raised it just long enough to capture everything: the banner, the people, the smiles. My father noticed immediately. "What is that?" he called out. "Collecting evidence for your therapist?" I looked at him steady and said the only words I had spoken all day. "No. For later." Then I got in my car and left. Silence is terrifying to people who are used to your presence being constant, your help automatic, your forgiveness guaranteed. For 3 days, no one contacted me because they thought they had won. That's how entitlement works. It mistakes absence for surrender. Until things start breaking. The first crack showed up Monday afternoon. One of my father's city clients rejected a permit resubmission because the insurance certificate attached had expired. Normally, I would have caught it, fixed it, resent everything before anyone noticed. This time, the email sat untouched until the client escalated it directly to him. Final delay before reassignment. He called me once. I let it ring. On Tuesday, the project management system shut down. The backup card was gone. The main card failed. Everything stopped. Work orders, measurements, schedules. Gone until someone fixed it. My Uncle Mark called 3 times. No voicemail. Emily sent one message. Dad says stop being dramatic and log in. I didn't reply. Wednesday morning, the workshop received a shut-off warning from the power company. I know because my father called me at 7:12 a.m., using a voice I hadn't heard in a long time. Soft, controlled, almost polite. "Jolie, sweetheart. Call me when you get this. There's some confusion with the utility account. I think your card might still be connected somehow. We can fix it." Confusion. I almost laughed. By Thursday, the tone shifted. My uncle left a long voicemail, less slurred than usual, which meant he was actually scared. He said he didn't mean anything at the party, that I knew how he got when he drank. Then he asked if I could just help one more time. The company had a major install scheduled. If it failed, everyone would suffer. Everyone. That word always shows up at the same time. After they've already chosen who doesn't matter. I didn't answer. Friday was when it became personal. Emily called me, crying. Not real regret, not accountability, disruption. She said Dad was in one of his moods. Uncle Mark was blaming everyone. Grandma Ruth was saying God was punishing the house for pride. And suddenly, everything I had quietly held together was unraveling in plain sight. Emily said she needed $600. Her hours had been cut at the med spa. Rent was due. Dad had promised to help, but now there were issues with payroll. She sounded stressed, rushed, and then she said it. "Please don't make this into a thing." That phrase had followed me for years. Don't make it a thing when Uncle Mark made jokes about my body. Don't make it a thing when Dad turned my room into storage, because I should be grateful to have one. Don't make it a thing when Emily borrowed money and forgot. Don't make it a thing when Grandma Ruth compared me to younger women with husbands and perfect lives. My pain was always the thing. Their behavior was just normal. So I asked her one question. "Do you know why Dad can't help you?" She went quiet. That kind of silence that means she wants the answer, just not the responsibility that comes with it. "No," she said. "He just keeps saying cash flow is weird." "Cash flow is weird," I repeated. Then I laughed. That night she texted again. This time angry. She said I was punishing the family because my feelings were hurt. She said Dad had every right to kick me out if I wasn't contributing. She said normal adults pay rent. I sent her one screenshot. Not everything. Just a small piece. 3 months of line items with her name, my father's company, and the workshop expenses. Underneath, I wrote one sentence. "Since you're interested in contribution." She didn't reply for 2 hours. Then she texted back. "What is this A sample?" I said. Saturday morning, my father called 6 times before noon. By the 3rd voicemail, the confidence was gone. By the 5th, so was the anger. By the 6th, all that was left was panic dressed up as control. "Jolie, please call me back. I'm asking as your father. We need to understand what you've been paying and what you turned off. Mark says vendor accounts are locked. The workshop might lose power. One of the trucks could be repossessed because insurance didn't go through." Then he said it. If this is some kind of lesson, fine. Lesson learned. Just call me. Lesson learned. Not an apology. Not we were wrong. Just a man realizing the system he depended on had disappeared. That afternoon, I did something I had imagined many times. I built a packet, not emotional, not messy, clean. 31 pages, a timeline, amounts, screenshots, payment records, notes on every emergency I had quietly handled. Separate sections for business expenses, household support, direct transfers to family members, and unpaid labor. At the very end, I included one photo. The banner, the party, their faces. I printed 2 copies. One for me, one for whoever needed to finally see it. Sunday after church, my grandmother left me a voicemail filled with quiet judgment. She said bitterness would poison me, that my father had only spoken harshly because he was under pressure, that I should have compassion, that bringing money into family matters was ugly. She said if I had truly been generous, I wouldn't be counting. I called her back, not to argue, to make sure someone else heard the truth. You're right, I said. Generosity doesn't keep score. Accounting does. She went silent. Then I asked her one question. If I send you proof that Dad and Uncle Mark have been relying on me while calling me a freeloader, will you tell the truth for once? She didn't answer. Which was an answer. An hour later, my father texted. Talk now, please. I replied. Tomorrow, noon, public place. He answered immediately. Home. I looked at the message for a long moment. Then I typed back. You wanted an audience when I left. You can have one when you ask why. We met Monday at a diner off the highway. The kind of place where no one looks twice at a tired man or a tense conversation. He was already there when I arrived. His truck parked crooked like he had pulled in too fast. Uncle Mark sat beside him. Of course he did. Men like him only take things seriously when another man is there to witness it. Neither of them had ordered anything. I placed the packet on the table between us. My father looked at it like paper itself had offended him. What is this? He asked. I slid it closer. The difference between your version of the story and mine. He opened it casually, like he expected nonsense. That confidence lasted maybe 10 seconds. His eyes dropped to the total, then snapped back up at me like the number itself had insulted him. Uncle Mark leaned over, scanning the first page. Jesus, he muttered under his breath. I had organized everything carefully. No room for emotion, no room for denial. 30 months of support, then categories. Company expenses I covered or prevented. Personal transfers, messages, missed filings I corrected. And finally, a conservative estimate of unpaid labor. At the very end, the photo, the banner, the party. Their smiles. My father flipped a page too hard. This is ridiculous. You're exaggerating. Am I? He pointed at one line. This software wasn't for me. It was for your company, I said calmly. Another page. These fuel payments were temporary. 3 months, I replied. All after you told me payroll was fine. Uncle Mark had already gone quiet. My father shifted. Families help each other. That doesn't mean you act like a debt collector. I held his gaze. Interesting. When I lived in your house, you called it freeloading. But when you lived off my money, it became family. His voice dropped. Don't do this here. You mean with witnesses, I asked. You taught me that. Uncle Mark tried to step in. Jolie, I was drunk at the party. I didn't mean any of that. I looked at him. You didn't apologize when you sobered up. You apologized when things stopped working. He had nothing to say. My father tried again. Fine. Maybe you helped more than we realized. But you were still living in my house. There it was. His entire logic. Shelter erased everything. So I answered him clearly. If I had paid rent somewhere else and kept my money away from your business, you would have lost everything over a year ago. If I had billed you like a client for everything I fixed, you'd already be bankrupt. The only reason you got to call me a freeloader is because I loved you quietly. That hit harder than any number. He flipped again until he found the photo. His expression changed. Not guilt. Calculation. You took this for leverage. No, I said. I took it because I knew you'd pretend it wasn't that bad. Uncle Mark rubbed his face. So what now, he asked. What do you want? Nothing. They both looked at me. That's the part you still don't understand. I already gave everything. I'm just done. My father's jaw tightened. You can't just walk away and let everything fall apart over a grudge. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't leave because of a grudge. I left because your disrespect finally cost more than my loyalty. Silence. Then he asked the only question that mattered to him. How much of this can you fix? Not how are you. Not we were wrong. Just operations. I answered honestly. Some things can be fixed. Some can't. Vendor accounts might reopen if you pay deposits. The power can stay on if you settle the balance. The truck insurance will cost more now. And at least 2 clients are already damaged. Because no one was there to rewrite your emails. That stung him. You're enjoying this. No, I said. I would have enjoyed you noticing before it got here. Then he softened. Talked about how hard life had been since my mom passed. Said he made mistakes. Said we shouldn't be sitting like enemies. For a second, I almost believed the shape of it. But not the truth. We're here like this, I said, because you threw a party when you thought you didn't need me anymore. The softness disappeared. So what do you want? An apology I didn't answer. He tried one last move. He listed everyone. Grandma Ruth, Emily, Uncle Mark, their needs, their struggles, trying to turn their dependence back into my responsibility. I took out a second envelope and placed it beside the packet. What's this? He asked. Resources. Inside was a list of accountants, legal services, and business consultants. That's all I'm offering. I stood up. He stopped me. If you walk out now, don't expect to come back when things get better. I picked up my keys. Dad. The only reason things ever got better was because I was behind you fixing them. Then I left. I thought that was the end. It wasn't. Because when you remove the one person holding everything together, collapse doesn't happen all at once. It happens in pieces. Days later, my grandmother called. Not to apologize, to negotiate. She said everyone had made mistakes, which really meant I was supposed to share the blame. She asked me to come back and talk calmly. I asked her if the banner had been calm. She ignored that. Talked about the business. A truck was down. Clients were pulling back. If the company fails, it hurts the whole family, she said. It already did, I answered. Then she mentioned my mother. Said she wouldn't want this division. That used to work on me, not anymore. My mother wouldn't have wanted her daughter humiliated by people who depended on her, I said. She had no reply. Weeks later, Emily came to see me. She looked different. Tired. Stripped of the confidence she used to wear like armor. Eventually, she said it. I was awful to you. No excuses. Just truth. She admitted she joined in because it was easier than standing against him. Then she said something that explained everything. When you were there, he focused on you. Now, he's turning on everyone. That was the system. Remove the target. And the damage spreads. I asked her one question. Did you really believe I was freeloading? She looked down. No. I just didn't want to say it out loud. That was enough. Not forgiveness, but clarity. Meanwhile, my father sent me an email. A proposal. 90 days. Help stabilize the business. Payment later. And a line at the bottom. This is a chance to rebuild trust. I laughed. Then I replied, I am not coming back. I am not working for free. Do not contact me for business again. If you speak to me, do it as family, not as a manager. He responded immediately. So you're just going to watch your father lose everything? I stared at that message for a long time. Then I wrote back. You're not losing everything because I left. You're losing everything because you built a life that only worked while someone you looked down on kept carrying it. He never replied. Months later, the house was sold. The company shrank. People moved on. And I didn't go back. That was the real ending. Not revenge. Freedom. I built something of my own. Work that paid up front. Boundaries that held. A life where silence meant peace, not tension. And sometimes I still look at that photo. The banner, the laughter. The moment they thought they were watching me fall. What they didn't realize was that it was the exact second everything holding them up walked away. I learned that silence is not weakness when it protects your dignity, and walking away is not failure when it saves your life. Sometimes the hardest truth is realizing that love should not cost you your self-worth. If you were in my place, would you stay and keep fixing everything, or choose yourself and let the truth speak on its own? Did you stay with me until the end? Thank you for listening. If this story meant something to you, consider subscribing, liking, or sharing, because your small action might help someone else see their worth and make a braver choice. This story was fully created and produced by our team. We do not copy or borrow content from any other channel. Thank you for staying with us and listening until the end.